Good morning, Herd Surf. Today we're speaking with Elliot Rosenberg. He comes all the way from Rio de Janeiro. Elliot successfully ran an Indiegogo campaign back in December of 2013 to help make the World Cup experience a memorable and affordable experience. Over the course of their 60-day campaign, they were able to raise over $31,000 with the help of 75 backers. The Favela experience is a one-of-a-kind project that gives tourists the real experience of living in the favelas of Brazil, all while experiencing one of the biggest events in the world, the World Cup. The Favela experience offers accommodations for tourists traveling to the World Cup for 50% below youth hostels. As prices began to skyrocket, Elliot and his team created a unique way for people to experience the World Cup without tearing a hole in their wallet. Today we'll hear his story and hopefully get a little taste of what the experience will be like. Thanks for joining us today, Elliot. How's everything over there?
It's great. Very hot here in the Southern Hemisphere during our summer, but glad to be on, talking about my crowdfunding experience.
Awesome, absolutely. So let's just jump right into it. Why don't you tell the crowd a little bit what is a favela?
A favela is originally an informal squatter settlement in Brazil that over many years has developed into a really vibrant and unique community. In the city of Rio, there are about 800 of them, and they're kind of spread out across the city, and some of them are even in the middle of really wealthy neighborhoods, even though favelas themselves are known for being poor. But in many ways, like a lot of Brazilian national culture, dance, music, sports, really comes from favelas. So they're very, very significant in the country.
Gotcha. So what kind of things would you see at a favela? Is it is there people working in the favelas? Is it kind of a close-knit society? Can you kind of give us a walkthrough?
So, first of all, the way that they look is they're very densely packed, especially the ones that are on hillsides don't have like a grid of streets. They might have a few streets that run through them, but they're going to be pretty small. The majority of the favela is just like a labyrinth of homes that seem to be stacked on top of each other, but they're depending on the size. I mean, they can range from a few hundred homes to where I live and work in Rocinha, the largest favela in Brazil that has up to 300,000 residents on it.
Wow. So you did mention that you're actually living in a favela right now. So do you live with another family, or do you live with other people? You said you're actually living in a favela at the time, or right now you are living in a favela. Are you living with another family, or are you living by yourself?
Actually, I do live in Rocinha, which is the largest favela in Brazil. But I actually live by myself in my own one-bedroom apartment.
And obviously, you kind of said the favelas are really close together. They're pretty dense in population, but obviously through this interview we can see that you're getting all the necessities in terms of I'm sure there's water available and food and obviously internet. Is there any issues on this terms, or is it pretty well-functioning society?
So I think a lot of people from the United States or Europe, when they visit here, are surprised with how developed they are. There are definitely still challenges to living here. All those utilities that you mentioned, yes, they exist here, but they're not as constant or reliable as the rest of the city outside the favelas, and definitely what we're used to in the developed world. So, I mean, part of what we do is, as a social enterprise, we're we recognize that people here are much lower income than the rest of the city. So we're looking to increase their incomes by having them host visitors in their homes year
Mm-hmm.
round.
Got it. So, where did this idea for the favela experience? I mean, where did it come from? Judging by your accent, I'm gonna assume that you're from the United States. Did you move to Brazil to pursue this, or can you kind of give us maybe a little bit background story of how this all escalated?
Yeah, it is definitely a long story, but I am originally from the United States. I first came to Brazil in 2011 to study abroad. I studied in Sao Paulo, which is the biggest city in Brazil, and I was able to travel a lot while I was here. Ultimately, I came to Rio and I just fell in love with the city. It's such a breathtaking landscape, and people are so friendly and laid back, and
You
there are always lots of fun things to do.
you fell in love with a Brazilian woman.
That's obviously part of it. And I the first time I came there, I had a pretty touristy experience, staying in a hostel, only hanging out with other foreigners, and even though I spoke Portuguese and already been in the country for a while, I left I left Rio longing for a more meaningful experience to participate in the culture with Brazilians,
Mhm.
but I didn't really know what that was until I came back a year later, and a mutual friend introduced me to someone who does tourism in Rocinha, where I am now,
Mhm.
and does it in a very unique way, in that he's born and raised and continues to live in the favela. He only hires other guides who live in the favela, and he uses a lot of the income that he makes from tourism
Mhm.
and reinvests it into actually a free DJ school that he
Hmm.
runs out of his apartment. And I thought
Interesting.
that was a really unique model. And at the same time, I came and I here was where I found the really the real Rio, the real Brazil that I had been searching for the first time I came here. And I was just overwhelmed by how palpable the energy is in the community, and
Mhm.
how overwhelmingly welcoming people are. And I ended up staying here and having a great time, and it was so different than all the negative things that I'd heard about favelas.
Mhm.
And even the first time that I'd come to Rio, someone had invited me to come to Rocinha, and I said, "No way, I don't want to die." And then just coming here and realizing that the reality was so different than the stereotype, I felt compelled to show the world what it really is here, and to give people the positive experience that I had.
Mhm.
So coupling that with this this person who I'd met who does tourism here, saying that he had a lot of people contacting him looking for places to stay, but he didn't really know anywhere to put them, and it wasn't his main business to do so. And also my personal experience, having lived in Latin America and stayed in homestays and locals' homes, to have an understanding that that's the best way to get to know a new culture and build relationships with local people.
Mhm.
I kind of put all those things together and said, why don't we just test out the idea here? And that was about a year ago.
Mhm.
And I was actually still in college at the time, and I had a semester left until I graduated, but was just sort of testing the idea with one property while I was finishing my final semester of school,
Mm-hmm.
and I was in business undergraduate program, and all my friends were going off to do consulting and banking, and that was definitely something that I thought I wanted to do previously, but I got really excited about this business and
Mm.
said I'd make a terrible management consultant and I'd probably hate it, so why don't I just go to the place that I really love and try something that is different and is gonna teach me in a much different way than a more conventional gig.
Absolutely. Got it. Wow. So that's a pretty exciting story, and it seems like you're kind of living the dream in a sense. Going out there, kind of taking the unconventional route after the typical college degree, getting those management consulting gigs or whatnot. You decided I had a good time in Brazil. I want to go back, and I want to share this experience with everyone else. That's awesome. Cool. So why don't the actual favela experience? Can you indulge a little bit in that? What my understanding is basically you'll be hosting an array of people that are coming to see the World Cup, and they'll be staying in the favela. What will the experience entail, and what will people what can they expect?
Yeah, so we're offering shared rooms, private rooms, and private apartments for travelers. I mean, year round, but especially now focusing on the World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in a couple favelas that are in the prime south zone of Rio, which is where most of the action will be centered for the event.
Mm-hmm.
And this is really just going to be the best way for guests, for visitors to the country to immerse themselves in authentic Brazilian culture. The accommodations are basic, but they're comfortable. They're in safe areas, and hosts are very friendly and
Mm-hmm.
well oriented to share their culture and be receptive of other cultures.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, one of the big draws is that people are going to save a ton of money
Right.
doing this, even over youth hostels, like you mentioned before, which are going for $100 to $200 a night just for a single bed in a
Mm-hmm.
shared room. And the actual figure for the city of Rio in June, when the World Cup starts, is like $460 a night for a room
Wow.
in the city. So when we're half or a quarter of those prices, it's a pretty attractive deal for people who otherwise couldn't afford to come to Brazil, which overall is going to be ridiculously expensive for the World Cup.
Yeah, I can imagine it being getting really, really expensive, and just from my own research, I've learned the same things. I was actually a little bit interested in coming to the World Cup, but I know the price is pretty substantial. I know another a little bit of concern for the on the favelas is that safety is obviously there is that stereotype that you were mentioning that people like you said you didn't want to go the first time that you were offered to come to the favelas. So what has changed, and what can what is giving people more confidence to actually go there and stay for the World Cup?
Sure. So, in advance of the World Cup and then the Olympics in 2016, there's a new government initiative that has installed 24/7 community police in some of the favelas. And we're only in favelas that have these new community police units.
Mm-hmm.
And previously, none of the favelas had any permanent police presence, but in the few years that the police have been around, a lot has changed, and that's definitely caused a lot more interest overall from visitors and visiting and staying in the favelas. But on top of that, we thoroughly screen the hosts, the properties that we have. We do everything in person, interviewing all the members of the household of the organization that's hosting our guests to make sure that they're trustworthy,
Mm-hmm.
concerned with guest safety, and definitely going to provide a comfortable and clean accommodation standard, while at the
Mm-hmm.
same time be willing to share their own culture and be curious about other cultures. And on top of that, we've been doing this for about a year now outside the World Cup,
Mm-hmm.
have over 40 uh, very positive reviews from guests
Mm-hmm.
online. And what the consensus is that actually people feel a lot safer inside the favelas than they do outside in the more touristy areas, because there's a real sense of community here.
Mm-hmm.
They feel that the favelas welcome tourism because they appreciate what tourists are contributing to the local economy,
Mm-hmm.
and they value that visitors are appreciating their culture, which is really a culture that's been so marginalized in mainstream Brazilian society, that it's definitely self-esteem boosting when you have people coming from all over the world and they're not staying in hostels and hotels in Copacabana, but they're
Mm-hmm.
staying in these communities instead.
Mm-hmm.
But I've lived in the biggest favela in Rio for 9 months now, and I definitely feel safer and more welcome here than I do anywhere else in the city.
Wow, that's a big statement, and it sounds like you're getting a lot of response even from the past visitors that they're all enjoying the experience and um, feel safe in the favelas. So that's really good to hear. So in terms of the actual favela experience that you guys are offering, um, like how long has it been in development? You kind of said you've been living there for 9 months, and you kind of got the excitement prior to actually living there. How long has everything been in development?
I mean, it started as an idea about a year and a half ago,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was finally able to test out the idea about a year ago,
Uh-huh.
and actually started making sales about a year ago as well. But I moved here after I graduated in May,
Mm-hmm.
and I've really only been full time dedicating myself to growing the business since then.
Okay, got it. And when did you? I mean, was there a moment or a time when you thought, okay, this is could be successful, or this is successful? I'm going to go full at it and just grow this. I mean, was it from the favela community? Were they telling you that it was successful, or was it you were getting it from customers that were coming, or was it a combination?
It was really when uh, I created a website and started doing some online marketing work with it,
Mm-hmm.
and I was still in school and I only had one like test property at the time, but I had a ton of interest for the World Cup. Just uh, lots of strangers mostly finding me through search engines
Mm-hmm.
and looking for accommodations for the World Cup, and me not having anywhere to put them. So I saw the demand for that, and realized that if I was going to even house a small fraction of these people, that I needed to to actually get to Rio and expand the base of properties.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So I guess from that, when you realize that it was, something that's successful and there is a demand for it, people want these properties or people want a place to stay for the World Cup. I guess when did you decide that crowdfunding could be a route for you to take?
Yeah, it was actually early last year, when I saw the need to quickly expand the supply of properties
Mm-hmm.
in a short amount of time, and needing funding to do that. And I recognize that for big events like this, people are at least willing to put up deposits in
Mm-hmm.
advance, and that could be used to expand the business in the meantime. Because at the time, I was actually using Airbnb as a booking platform and as a channel in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
We still use it, but the problem with Airbnb is that, at least from the host side, is that the funds are not released until 24 hours after the guest checks in.
Uh-huh.
So, if we were to use Airbnb for the World Cup, then we wouldn't get any of the money until the World Cup itself.
I see.
So seeing the need to get money up front was why we looked to crowdfunding.
So crowdfunding, I mean, there's a lot of options out there. There's, obviously many platforms and many ways to go about it. Why did you decide to go with Indiegogo?
It was part because there was an alumna from my school,
Mm-hmm.
who worked there and was pushing the platform hard, and was going out of her way to make it accessible for us, and uh, also offering things like making our campaigns a staff pick,
Mm-hmm.
or lowering our fees. So that was definitely one of the factors. But I definitely looked into other platforms, and of
Mm-hmm.
course the main option was Kickstarter. But this campaign would not have qualified for Kickstarter because of its restrictions on categories.
I see.
So I guess, had we been eligible to be on the platform.
Mm-hmm.
But another benefit that Indiegogo had in this case was the flexible funding option. So allowing you to keep whatever you raise, instead of Kickstarter's all or nothing model.
Got it.
And in our sense, when people were booking World Cup accommodations, which is essentially what we were using the campaign to pre-sell, is just different levels of accommodations for the World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
People want to be certain that they're booking, and
Mm-hmm.
if we were going to use the Kickstarter model, or even the fixed funding option on Indiegogo, then guests who booked early on in the campaign before we reached our goal, especially at the very beginning, would be worried about spending the time of the campaign not sure if they'd actually. So that was why Indiegogo and flexible funding made sense for us. And I mean, on top of that, we weren't as it wasn't as rigid for us to raise a certain amount of money. For us, any amount of money could go towards expanding the business, in terms of hiring people to acquire more properties, or even helping properties to outfit their spaces for the event. So it wasn't as rigid, or it wasn't so much a need for all or nothing.
Got it. Did you have any challenges getting onto Indiegogo?
No, I mean it was a pretty straightforward process. I think they don't have any approval process that you need to go through like Kickstarter does. I mean, I haven't used Kickstarter, but I've heard that that's the case. Indiegogo is definitely a much more open platform. I'd say that kind of the interface for setting up a campaign can be a little annoying. It's not, at least when I used it, I'm sure they're constantly improving it, but when I used it, it wasn't exactly user-friendly. Things like every time I saved the description for a perk, the screen or the page would automatically scroll to the top, and then when I wanted to create the next perk, I had to scroll all the way to the bottom, or like things like the character limit.
Right, so it sounds like there was a little bit of the user experience is, it obviously needs, or from your explanation, maybe needs a little bit of fine-tuning, but I guess that kind of comes along with any startup-esque type of company. Can you tell us a little bit about the effort that went into preparation of the campaign? What was there? You said you had like a friend that was working there. Was that of help, or did you have any like blogs or books that you read? What kind of prep went into your campaign?
Yeah, I'd say we looked at different channels for the marketing strategy. Of course, I'm sure one of the big myths that you guys are trying to dispel is that crowdfunding is a if you build it, they will come type medium.
Yeah.
That's almost never the case. It's really just for the most part a means to transact and to like hold funds in an escrow account. And the campaign owner has to do all the hard work of bringing the crowd to contribute.
Right.
So we definitely knew that beforehand. And things that the areas we were looking at to get contributions were, of course, through personal network, friends, family, just kind of groups that we're a part of, which is usually huge for most crowdfunding campaigns.
Yeah.
The crowdfunding platforms are really just a way to activate that personal network. Literally going through all of my email contacts and LinkedIn contacts and Facebook contacts and picking out the ones that I thought would be most likely to contribute and writing personal messages to them, and then sending mass emails to the remaining contacts. We had no budget to spend really on paid advertising, paid media. So the idea that we had that we thought was ingenious but didn't end up doing much at all was the idea of affiliate marketing, sort of like paid for performance marketing, going to blogs and sites and saying that in exchange for advertising our campaign, you'll get a percentage of any contributions you drive to the campaign, which we can easily track just through the unique referral link that's built into Indiegogo and is, I'm sure, on Kickstarter, where any user who's logged in can track their referrals and referred contributions to any campaign.
Right.
So we reached out to a lot of soccer sites, soccer NGOs, and got interest and got some bigger ones interested, and actually who ended up publicizing the campaign, but it had very little impact, and we spent a lot of time working on it. But I think it was definitely worth a shot. But in our case, it didn't work out at all. That's not to say it wouldn't work for other campaigns, and it's definitely something people should explore because there's no upfront cost to it.
Right.
Other than that, we wanted to get PR from a mainstream PR from the perspective of generating trust and credibility. Obviously, there's good reason to not trust any startup or crowdfunding campaign, especially when when there's a lot of scams going on and with the World Cup around tickets and accommodations, and just the negative reputation that favelas have only contributes to that more. So we wanted to generate that trust and credibility through mainstream media, and we ended up doing very well on that front. But I have to say that in many instances it wasn't because of our proactiveness. It was sort of just a lot of doing something that's newsworthy and being in the right place at the right time. But ultimately, we were mentioned in a story that was on the front page of the New York Times.
Oh, that's good.
We had a profile done about us in Forbes. We're on kind of like the main TV networks for a lot of countries like UK, Netherlands, Mexico. Got recommended by Lonely Planet, which is a big travel guide company for World Cup accommodations, as well as a bunch of other smaller media mentions. And that was really helpful in generating that trust and credibility. We knew that mainstream media like that wouldn't actually end up leading to a lot of contributions to the campaign, but it was still valuable regardless. It was nice, but in order to actually reach the niche audience of soccer fans coming to this event, being in Forbes or the New York Times didn't end up leading to many sales.
Interesting. So, can you go a little bit more into, I guess, how did you get into those publications?
Yeah. Actually, I'm planning to write a personal blog post about this soon because a lot of people were impressed by it. But I'd say at the end of the day, the key is doing something that's newsworthy and unique. So something that's newsworthy is something that's that kind of triggers some emotion, whether it be shock or curiosity or anger, something that plays strongly on human psychology in some way. And I think that basically, offering accommodations for people in places that much of the world would refer to as slums,
right,
for such a big event when there was already lots of press and the lead up to it is something that just led to lots of media outlets finding out about and wanting to cover. It ended up being that virtually all of the publications were covering the same story, and we were just easily accessible in search results or through personal networks that they were the ones who contacted us.
I see.
But it definitely helps to make yourself easily accessible and think about what are journalists looking for. With a few publications, I guess the big ones that was really about proactive relationship building on our part.
Mm-hmm.
With Forbes, I saw that a former employer had an article written about them in
Mm-hmm.
Forbes, and I saw that reporter's beat, or their focus, was for-profit social enterprise, which is a space that we're very much in.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally just found her personal website, which she had her personal cell phone number listed on. I called her up, left a voicemail, and she called me back.
Wow.
And I thought she, uh, was just gonna write me off, but out of the blue, like a week after that, I get an email asking to set up a time for an interview.
Right.
Um,
Nice.
so that was cool, but something that kind of like a secret that I want to share with your audience is that
Mm-hmm.
it's actually not hard to get onto particularly Forbes
Mm-hmm.
and Huffington Post, which
Okay.
we both got onto. And that's because they have a business model whereby they are trying to create as much content as they can.
Mm-hmm.
It's been heavily criticized in the journalism field, but they have what are called contributor networks. I don't know. I assume that's what it's called for Huffington Post as well. But basically,
Mm-hmm.
uh, people who are either freelance journalists or know something about a particular space
Mm-hmm.
will more or less write for those publications for free.
Oh,
They might get paid a little bit for having a lot of page views, but those publications just let the the best content rise to the top,
I
and they don't
see.
have many costs for
Mm-hmm.
doing that. So it's not all too hard to get covered by a contributor on one
Okay.
of those publications. And 99.9% of the public is not going to know the difference between getting covered by a contributor, whom there are many of,
Uh-huh.
and you getting covered by a paid staff person.
I see.
If they're contributors, or even, I mean, any journalists really for that matter, but the barriers to getting to a contributor are much lower.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if there's anyone who's covering a space that you're in, um, then just particularly following them on Twitter and interacting with their tweets, not being annoying, but being useful and insightful whenever possible. That's
Mm-hmm.
not something that you're going to be able to do overnight, but if you're planning far in advance, as anyone should be for a crowdfunding campaign,
Absolutely.
then that's going to make it so when the time comes for you to make the ask, or for an article, or to connect more, then it's going to be much more likely that they'll be interested in you.
Right. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, it seems like these, outlets like that can go a long way. Just getting any type of press, I think, builds a lot of credibility for your campaign itself, and for backers who have a little bit of, you know, everyone has like a little hesitance of backing a campaign, typically just because, who knows if it's going to succeed or not. So, to getting some of those pretty reputable sources covering you, I think it goes a long way. And in your case, it didn't necessarily bring direct contributions, but it could
I mean,
be.
it did bring some.
Okay.
It wasn't, honestly, the way that I got uh, most of contributions was through search engines. I mean, I know a little bit about search engine optimization,
Mm-hmm.
but I definitely tried to optimize my page as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but those big media mentions particularly when they put links to your site in them, can do a lot for boosting your pages in the search engine results pages, because that's one of the main factors in Google and Bing's algorithm is getting links from authoritative sites.
So kind of in the whole scheme of things, those publications could have essentially helped you bring people from the search engines onto your site and onto in your campaign.
It's hard to measure, but that's very likely the case.
Yeah, and that definitely makes sense. What about on the social sphere? Did you have any success with that? The Twitters and the Facebooks.
I think it definitely expanded our reach, but I can't remember a lot of the actual sales directly coming from Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and Google Plus. I mean, they're definitely using particularly LinkedIn and Facebook to search my personal network and reach out to them for both just donations at a low perk level and World Cup bookings.
Right.
was very helpful. I mean, I just wouldn't have had everyone's contact information in one place.
Okay.
And we got retweeted by interesting people and stuff like that. But in terms of direct contributions, from using those platforms in a more public way, I don't think we got a lot.
Okay. No, I mean, it makes sense. The social networks can be hit or miss with crowdfunding campaigns, but I think all in all, I get from just doing interviews with other crowdfunding successors is reaching out to the friends and family networks and just getting personable with them and having direct emails to them that goes a long way. And I think it seems like that is one of the main causes for effective campaigns. Okay, so let's touch a little bit on the finance. Your funding goal was $20,000. So was this like an adequate goal to launch the Favela experience? And I guess you did do a flexible funding, so I guess the funding goal wasn't as necessary. But was there any specific calculations that maybe went into this, or was there a goal that you needed to surpass?
Yeah, just to be clear, in how we're probably different from most crowdfunding campaigns is that we had already launched and we're already making sales and had already made World Cup bookings. We were using crowdfunding as a means to create a sense of urgency, make it or do something based around an event that would be more newsworthy, having a campaign on a recognized crowdfunding platform with a finite start date and end date we thought would be more easily covered by media. And then just in terms of creating a public and transparent record of success, just saying, look at this link, this is how much we raised, it's right there, you can scrutinize it as much as you want. Those were the main reasons why we use crowdfunding, besides of course getting money up front, but we could have always gotten money up front just from selling through our website, using PayPal or something like that. But the funding goal actually, we originally set at 40,000, because we had read that sort of the sweet spot for for having your goal met was in the $20,000 to $40,000 range in general, and that's pretty much that's pretty true, I think.
Okay.
But since we were running a flexible funding campaign, just based on the nature of our business and the project at hand, there wasn't really a particular amount of money that we needed. Otherwise, what we were doing wouldn't be viable. So that was why we went with flexible funding, and that's why we went with that amount. But as the campaign was going slowly, we found out that it's possible, and probably something that's standard but secret for every campaign on Indiegogo, is that campaign owners can contact Indiegogo support and ask for both their funding goal to be changed and their deadline to be changed. So we ended up cutting the funding goal from 40,000 to 20,000 and extending the deadline from 35 days to the maximum, which is 60 days. Which is kind of a cop-out, but we also we wanted to reduce our fees as much as possible. And Indiegogo's fee structure is that campaigns that don't reach their goals, even on flexible funding, are charged higher fees. Or at least, that's the case only with flexible funding. If you do fixed funding, then everyone gets their money back.
Right.
So we wanted to reach our goal, and of course make it appear as though our campaign was successful. So it's somewhat of a cop-out, but still something that is kind of not well known that I think people should know about, and there are certain circumstances where I guess it would make sense to do.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we really, really appreciate you sharing that with us, because any type of a recommendation or strategy that can help future crowdfunders, I think definitely will go a long way. So definitely thanks for sharing that with us. So the campaign had 8 perk levels, and it was pretty much they were separated into the type of experience you want to have. I guess in terms of nights and how many days you want to stay there. What was the most popular level?
It was the most affordable accommodations option, which was 5 nights in a shared room for $250 total. So that was what most people selected, and I mean that makes sense, understanding that maybe the main value proposition of this is how affordable we are. So people were opting for the most affordable option.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so when you jumped into the crowdfunding arena, you set up everything, created a very, very nice video. What were your expectations going into the campaign? Going through the whole process, was it very emotional for you guys, or, I know some people, it's, they staying up all night all the time. Can you go into how the experience was for you?
Yeah, it's definitely really draining, and I knew that, having done research about it beforehand. I definitely had dreams of this raising a lot more. But in terms of crowdfunding campaigns, it's still a moderate success.
Absolutely.
But because we ended up extending it to the maximum deadline of 60 days, definitely ended up losing a lot of focus and motivation towards the end. That's part of probably why all the guides recommend that you keep your funding period around 30 days. It's hard to focus on on one thing and pour so much energy into something for so long.
Right, yeah.
And I mean, also the shorter funding periods, I guess, create a greater sense of urgency
Hmm.
with potential backers that will prevent them from procrastinating on contributing or just forgetting about your campaign.
Yeah.
So that was what it felt like a lot to go through it. Just hustling every possible corner we could
Mm.
during the campaign, and a lot of things were not successful at all. Were pretty disappointing,
Hmm.
but that's standard for any business.
Yeah, absolutely. So it seems like you guys went out kicking in the beginning, but you kind of lost a little bit of steam towards the end. I guess when did you breathe a sigh of relief knowing that okay, we reached a adequate goal and we're pretty happy with this. When was that?
I mean, it was still kind of had all the way through the last minutes, like, hopes of reaching as high as possible and and trying to push our total raise as high as possible. Um, so there wasn't really any point we were sort of satisfied. I mean, I guess actually reaching the revised $20,000 goal
Hmm.
was a sigh of relief, just in that we would be paying lower fees, and we had a successful quote unquote campaign
Right.
that we could point to. But yeah, there was never, even though we got weary towards the end, there was never really any point where we're just like, this is a success.
Right. No, I understand. Well, I mean, obviously, you guys, passed your, quote unquote funding goal, but that goes a long way, and I think $31,000 is a lot of money to raise for any company. So I think you guys did a excellent job raising the funds, and I think it's a really exciting experience that you guys will be offering. But now that you're done with the campaign, and um, I don't know, maybe you have the funds in your bank account. I know sometimes it takes a little bit of time, but I guess my question is, what are your post campaign steps, and what are some of the things you are doing to prepare for the World Cup, and quite a few people are actually going to be coming and experiencing the Favela experience.
Yeah, at this point, we've basically, we've sold out a lot of our inventory, and now we have to go through the laborious process of organizing logistics
Mm-hmm.
of 100 plus guests coming in and out in a short
Mm-hmm.
amount of time, and that's incredibly time consuming, and frankly boring in and of itself. But that's, we're fully aware of that was what it was going to be like before we started. But um, now trying with these funds to build the team, to have enough people here on the ground to provide good customer service to
Mm-hmm.
our guests, and really just be here to meet the guests in person when they
Mm-hmm.
arrive and escort them to their properties.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so that's the challenge now, as well as uh, doing as much as we can to continue building our inventory,
Mm-hmm.
because even after the campaign, lots and lots of inquiries are coming in,
Mm-hmm.
and we're largely sold out for most of the World Cup. So looking to get more properties at this point.
Okay. So you guys are, I mean, it's not, you just said it yourself, so you are actually receiving more inquiries past the Indiegogo campaign. Um, do you imagine to take on more people, or are you guys kind of like cutting it and this is...
We're taking more people, but we want to be able to ensure that the properties are as occupied as possible throughout the World Cup. So that's June 12th through July 13th. It's a long period, and we want to make sure there aren't many unoccupied days, so we can maximize the value of each property and the amount that we're generating for the family who's responsible for it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're much more trying to like fill the voids that we have in our availability right now, which are scattered across different properties for especially short amounts of time, maybe like in between match days, or it just really depends on property to property. But we're still bringing on new properties, and we want to have also a buffer of kind of like backup properties just in case there are problems, to make sure that everyone's satisfied in the end.
That's good. I mean, it sounds like you have a solid strategy line in line, and now it's just really tinkering with logistics and everything, which, you know, with anything can be time consuming and a little bit boring. But I think you guys are. I think there's still still a lot of excitement from the success, and I think you guys, looks like you guys are pushing forward with that. So this is like a kind of a long-term question. We'll see what. But after the World Cup, what are you guys going to continue offering something like this, or is it like, once the World Cup is over, maybe we go to a different country and do something? What do you guys have even talked about that, or?
Yeah, I think the core of what we're trying to do is make travel more immersive for travelers, and more beneficial for the places that it's in, particularly in the developing world. Because we see travel as having the potential to be so transformative for the travelers and the communities that travel is happening in. And there's a lot of limitations to the model that we're using now in terms of making that impact as big as possible. So we want to think of ways after the World Cup as to how we can incorporate technology more into what we do, to become less of a service and more of a product, and as such be able to reach more areas of the world that could benefit from this, and where travelers are interested in visiting, and at the same time grow to be a bigger business.
Gotcha.
So we're just focused on the World Cup for now, but after the World Cup, we want to think of ways to change the model that we use to better accomplish our goal of being bigger and more meaningful for the world.
Got it. So definitely seems like you have big plans ahead, and you're already thinking about strategies to scale the business, and it seems like the core is offering an experience or an immersive experience in a different culture than your own, and really learning for the traveler, but also offering benefits for the host. So it seems like a win-win on both sides, and I think the idea is truly amazing. So it's really exciting. So this whole endeavor, getting out of college and not going the typical management consultant route, banker route, the overall what you're maybe supposed to do, whatever they say you're supposed to do, but you went ahead and took the quote-unquote entrepreneur path and went on your own thing. Being this, taking your own path, taking your own strides, not even looking in the crowdfund arena, like on a broader aspect, what kind of, input or, personal advice can you offer other, per se, entrepreneurs or people trying to pursue something different than the, typical path?
I'd say that especially if you're young, you're fresh out of school, and ideally you don't have a lot of student loan debt, which isn't, the case for a lot of people. But this time is definitely when you'll likely have the most energy to pour into something, the least commitments in terms of significant other, children, a mortgage to pay, and you're probably going to be also most accustomed to living cheaply because you've been in college and you haven't had a lot of money to spend on yourself. So I think now's the best time to do something that is risky, but on the upside could be very profitable for yourself and somehow provide some meaningful contribution to society. And understand that you probably have very little to lose by doing this. And in many ways, it can be a more formative and educational experience than going to a big company or going to grad school. And I think it's totally worthwhile. I can't say it's not incredibly lonely and challenging throughout, but in the long run, it's definitely worth it. And just the feeling of being completely at the helm of your own destiny is pretty exhilarating. And sort of just the mentality of you eat what you kill is pretty empowering. Absolutely. So I definitely I recommend people look at it from that perspective of really what do I have to lose, and then also one thing that I see is that when people take more secure conventional jobs, they'll get used to a certain lifestyle by earning a steady salary. And even though I know a lot of people will say that, oh, I'll do something for a while, pay off loan debt, save up some money, then a few years later start the business that I'm excited about, I think that jump can be a lot harder than starting with next to no experience and with no money, because you're otherwise going from a pretty comfortable standard of living to probably something that's very uncomfortable. And that's going to be hard.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot harder than going from bottom to bottom.
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely touched on a lot of points there that I think for people of this younger generation, some people like the security and they say maybe I'll do it later on in life, but all in all, why not try it now when it's probably the less riskiest and you have the least amount of obligations that you have to stay committed to. So why not go out and try it? Why not go out and do something off the old beaten path, try something new? So that's really awesome that you're you're leading, you're going, you're making strides and doing really cool things. So, we're starting to wrap things up, or we're about wrapping things up here, and definitely all of this is really exciting, and I think if I had some extra funds, I would try to make it to the World Cup / extra time. Unfortunately, I don't know if this will be my time. Are you going to be going to the World Cup? Or
it's a matter of getting tickets at this point. I'm in the lottery, and I haven't heard back on this round, but I'd be really disappointed if I don't get to at least go to one game, even if it's like Bosnia-Herzegovina playing Ecuador. I couldn't care less. I just want to experience a game in Rio.
Oh yeah.
So hopefully something will come through.
Oh yeah. I'm sure you'll get a lot of the energy and the even just going to a bar near the stadium. I'm sure you'll be getting a lot of that World Cup, people from all different cultures, backgrounds coming to Rio. I think it's going to be really awesome just being there while everyone has experienced that. So I think that's one experience of them all. But I think that about does it. So you think we'll see you on Indiegogo again, or what do you think?
I mean, I don't think it's going to be real soon, but one thing to consider is just sort of like whenever someone does a crowdfunding campaign, they're using up a lot of social capital.
Mm-hmm.
So next time I do a crowdfunding campaign will be in a while, because I need for that to recharge and make it seem like I'm not constantly selling things or asking things of my friends and personal networks.
Right. You are. It is you're putting yourself out there pretty naked, I guess. And
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you don't want to become that person that just asks. No, I understand. Awesome. So I think that about does it, Elliot. Did you have any final words for the crowd?
I'd say crowdfunding is awesome if you have the right expectations and look at it in the right way. But it's not a if you build it and they will come type medium, and it takes a ton of preparation and focus to be successful.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So that does it. Elliot took us on the Favela experience, and we wish him all the best on the actual experience itself, and anything past that we are hoping to hear more of, and can't wait to see what comes of all of this. So Elliot, thanks for all your time, and appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.